Thank you for joining us for another wonderful episode of Write and Shine, Shining Through Your Words series. I have to start with wonderful because every time I get a guest like Nikki visiting me, I feel like a dog wagging her tail from excitement. Nikki, I actually couldn't wait meeting you. Please will you introduce yourself and also show us your books that you showed me that you recently published. And if you have more, please share with us.
Sure. So I'm NV Peacock. That's what I write under. I'm otherwise known as Nikki. I write thriller books. My debut thriller was called Little Bones. It was published through HarperCollins back when the pandemic was going on, so it was quite a turbulent time. It became a Tesco bestseller. Tesco, I don't know whether you have them in your country, but they're kind of like a big supermarket over here in the UK. And then a couple of years ago, I had The Brother out through a different publisher called Canelo, who are now owned by Penguin. And more recently, The 13th Girl, which was start of this year, which again through the same publisher, Canelo Hera. And also, I'm a co-host of a podcast as well, which is
Amazing.
all about, well, it is basically where thrillers meet true crime. We talk to other thriller
Ooh.
authors talking about the cases, the true crime cases that inspired their books and the kind of rabbit holes of research that they go down for it. So it's myself and my co-host, who is comedian Lisa Shepherd here in the UK. And we talk to authors, and it's called The Red Rabbit Hole, available wherever you like,
That's
hopefully.
amazing. And I was so excited to meet you purely because I love profiling, the story behind the stories. I
Mm.
was like, it's like a very interesting genre that you tapped into. And that would be my question, Nikki. When did you start writing these stories? Were you in school or how did you find this wonderful niche?
Well, I think I was always a bit of a writer. I did write at school. I remember the first ever short story that I wrote was about a killer scarecrow, and my mum was actually called into the school to talk to the head, thinking that obviously something was going horribly wrong at home. It wasn't, of course, and mum was quite angry that they would, kind of step on my creativity like that. And I just kind of grew up writing. Like a lot of people, I kind of life got in the way and I got doing other things. And it was only about, I think, 14 years ago that I decided, no, I'm going to make this, going to do a go of this. And I started writing short stories, and I ended up getting about 30 published throughout the world in anthologies from publishers such as Walker Books and Little Brown Book Group and many, many others. And that's when I started writing youth adult. I write under Nicky Peacock for short stories and youth adult, and I've got 5 youth adult novellas through a publisher called Ever 19. And yeah, and then I really, I'd always been interested in true crime, as most people
Wow.
are, but don't admit.
Yes.
And better now, but it used to be quite a dirty secret before.
Yes.
And I started listening to podcasts, and when they kind of started coming out, and everything was really kind of new and exciting, and started listening to podcasts and learning so much more about the genre and about I guess how dark the human soul can be. And that kind of pushed my already dark mind on. And I started thinking, I can write more thrillers. And thrillers, from a commercial kind of greedy aspect, they do tend to earn more money than most other genres. I think it's thrillers and romance, and I certainly ain't writing a romance anytime soon.
Maybe, who knows? Like, but I do think, like your face. Now you see, that's why I said I knew we're gonna have a good chat. Because for me as well, thrillers, I really enjoy trying to figure stuff out. Things
Mm.
shouldn't be too easy almost. You want to go with your mind. So that's why I really admire your writing style, what you do. So when you start a whole story, do you know how it's gonna end before the time? Or do you go with a story?
I feel like I'm ruining it by saying, yeah, I kind of do. I always know who the killer's going to be. It's very, very rare. that I'll get surprised at the end and be like, oh, I didn't mean that. Because I read a lot of thrillers as well, and I get really
Yes.
frustrated if
Yeah.
by the end you're like, and it's this person, and you're like, who's this person? Where have they come from? How was I supposed to guess that? So I get really
Yes.
frustrated with that. So my readers, I don't want my readers to ever be frustrated with my books. I want them
Okay.
to be able to pick up clues.
I
I'm going to
love
hide
it.
the clues pretty well, but they should be able to pick up clues and be able to say, okay, yeah, I can see that now. The twist is revealed, they can say, oh yeah, I
Yes.
get that now. But then I want them to go, I'm going to reread that book again and find out where I went wrong.
Love it. That is
And
so
then they will
fun.
discover them. Or if they don't, then by all means, you can contact me and I can point you in the right direction.
No, I love it. It feels like an escape room through your
Yeah.
books. You give the clues through that. And also, what I really love, Nikki, is you want to create more awareness about mental health.
Hmm.
How do you do that? Through thrillers, which is also fascinating for me.
It's kind of a combination of things that got me with the kind of the theme of mental health. Being a writer, our mental health is paramount
Yeah.
because it's very unlike other careers out there, you know. So we're as writers, we're very much alone when we write. It's us and a laptop.
Yes.
We're very lucky if we find a community, and that's what I've tried to do where I am. So I run like a local writers group that's got about 35 members in,
Wow.
and it's so nice to actually have other writers because we all tend to think the same. It's your tribe, so it's nice to
Yes.
have your tribe around you. And also the Facebook community, which is where we kind of met through the podcast.
Yes.
And it's those kind of things that we really have to kind of latch onto to be able to maintain any kind of self of kind of to feel like you belong somewhere, because it's
Yes.
very easy with these kind of books to get very lost in them. And then when they come out, you've got all the kind of readers, you can't please everyone all the time. And there's going to be readers that are not going to like what you've done, and that they're certainly not very shy of coming forward and saying that. And it can be very hurtful, if you've put
Yes.
all your blood, sweat, and tears into this book and someone's like, oh, I didn't like it. And they don't
No.
even want to tell you why they didn't like it, so you can't learn from it or anything. So it can be very frustrating. There's a lot of rejection, a lot of procrastination. That there's a lot of things that most people will deal with on the daily basis
Yes.
anyway. But for a writer, they're kind of, because it's our career, it's right up here for us.
Yes.
So the whole kind of mental health thing is quite important to me. And I think that as a country, I don't know how it is in South Africa, but in the UK, they're very backwards of coming forwards with mental health.
Yes.
It's acknowledged now. We have like stress week, and we have, and people can more openly talk about mental health issues, but it's still kind of in the shadows a lot of the time,
Yes.
and people don't quite understand. And this is why, like with the 13th girl, I wanted my protagonist D to be struggling with her mental health. And one of the things I learned sort of through the research was how hard it is for people that have been institutionalized
Yes.
or hospitalized to actually come out and go back into the real world. Similar to prisoners, for example, coming out of prison, and even to some extent soldiers from the army,
Yes.
that they're taught certain ways. They're kind of for example, little things that you perhaps wouldn't even think of, like when to have breakfast, what to wear, all these kind of little decisions that as kind of people on the outside we make for ourselves quite easily. It's like, oh yeah, I'm going to pop this top on today, or I'm going to
Yes.
have
Yes.
shreddies for breakfast or whatever. Whereas all those decisions in those kind of institutions are given to you. You don't have to make them. And so it can become very hard when they come out and suddenly they're
Yes.
overwhelmed by little decisions, that
Mm.
it can really affect them. And that
Yeah.
was the kind of thing that I was just really, with this book, I wanted to get across that, they're not write-offs, these people, and
Yes.
just because they
Yes.
got help, that doesn't mean to say that they're any, worse than the people that didn't get help, or that haven't even admitted that they have a problem, and that's I'm rambling now,
No,
but
I love it. I love it.
having a good old ramble. But yeah, it's that's what kind of spoke to me as a
And
person, because I just thought, it's hard for these people. I can completely empathize with what it's like, and especially in this country.
yeah, I totally relate as well, Nikki. For me, I actually published a book this year about trauma healing. And I
Oh,
used the narrative, a nurse in the war. And
mm,
also, with trauma, how you get detached from yourself,
yeah.
and your emotions. And I do think it's such a wonderful way through storytelling to
Mm,
create a narrative for other people to associate with. So I will definitely buy your book to read that because it just, brings you in and you can really associate with a character. It's a totally different way of describing how people go through. And also I do agree with you. I do think it's extremely brave to go and ask for help because so
mm,
many don't because of the stigma almost around mental health.
yeah. And it's the kind of thing, I mean, if with the character, it follows her around.
Mm,
She uh originally she has like, I don't want to spoiler alert, but she has an accident that affects her
mm,
brain. So it's a physical ailment as well as a mental health one. And she's she has a certain way of thinking, and she's not cured, but
mm,
she can cope. And it's because my narratives are always first person. It was very kind of I missed her so much. Like when I stopped
mm.
writing her, it was really hard
I get
because she
it.
has like a
Yes.
certain way of thinking and like reacting to things. And
Mm.
I could sometimes feel myself kind of channeled D a little bit.
Wow, that's amazing. Now, I absolutely get it. Like, I also just lock myself up almost, when I write. So what you've created with your group is wonderful because I do, when I create a lot, I almost feel in another world when you create, especially
Mm.
characters and stuff like that. And I do want to ask you, Nikki, if anyone wants to start writing and also felt the rejection, like you did with your teacher, what advice would you give new authors?
Um, I suppose for the writing process, read a lot
I
because
like
you'd be
that.
surprised at how many writers come to me and they're like, "Oh, I haven't read a book in like 10 years." It's like, you kind of have to. And also not to think that it's just as easy as putting a finger to a typewriter.
Yes, yes,
It's not murder she wrote. you know. And you do have to learn how to tell a good story, and there is a skill involved in that.
yes.
So kind
I
of
love
you
that.
can learn it almost through osmosis by reading because readers can, especially really avid readers, can tell very quickly when a story's not coming together or something doesn't feel right. They might not
Yes,
be able to say what it is, but they can say, it doesn't feel right. So you can kind of learn, but do it as you go. Don't think that you have to spend 10 years reading everything that you touch and learning it. Do just crack on there and start writing as well, because and again, a lot of people don't realize this, but 75% of writing is actually editing. And if you don't have anything, you can't edit anything,
it's brutal. The editing
isn't
part
it?
is brutal. The
Yeah.
nice part is the writing
The
almost.
lovely, yeah, it's the lovely part is when you feel like God and you've
Exactly.
come up with the whole story and the characters and you're like, yeah, I've achieved something. But then if you're anything like me, you then start procrastinating with research, going, oh, what am I going to
Exactly.
find out here? And you always feel like you're moving towards something. It's very deadly in
Yes.
research because you
Yes.
feel like you have to do it. But most of it, I'd say, a lot of what I did was actually cut out by the editor anyway, because it was like, well, you don't really need this. And I was like, but I spent so long doing it.
Yes. I get
And
it.
it helps you as a writer, but I think that my best advice is just, read, write, get on with it. Find your niche, find what you're passionate about, because it is a slog. I'm not going to lie to people and say, oh, it's
Mm.
easy and I got my
Yes.
first deal and
Yeah,
everything was
yeah, yeah,
great.
yeah,
I always get really frustrated with authors that are like that because they're spinning a yarn of a fairy tale that really doesn't exist. And
I
it
love
is
that.
hard, and you do have to be passionate about it to have your life and your work and everything else that you're doing at the same time, to be able to pay your bills at the same time as you're doing the
Yes,
writing. You're producing these books, and you're coming
exactly.
up with these stories, and the time it takes to actually do it as well. So I would say write, read, get on with
Repeat.
it. Yeah. Write, read, repeat.
Repeat.
Yeah, definitely.
That might be a new slogan there.
Yeah. And
So
like
I love
when it
your
comes,
honesty.
oh, thank you. Most people don't, but that's why.
Yeah, I love it. And
But
that's
I
the
always would be.
brutality. Like
I
it's real. When people
yeah.
see me as well, Nikki, sometimes I think they can see I look like this.
It's a look. But when it comes to like rejection and things like that, it is, you are going to get rejected as an author. I mean, rejection
Yes.
is part of life regardless. You're going to get rejected by people and groups and jobs and all sorts. And it is no different when it comes to the publishing sector. And again,
Yes.
authors that are like, oh, it was my first submission and I was
Mm.
taken up and everything was great. That's crap. It's the
I
whole
also
kind of
can't say the same from my, journey in South Africa also being published. It was brutal, the
it
rejection.
is,
And I'm like,
yeah. But
in
with
the beginning.
rejection, so the key with rejection is feel it, know that
Yes,
you've been rejected, that's fine. But it doesn't mean you're any less than what you were the day before.
love that.
And quite
Love that.
frankly, when it comes to, especially with publishing, it's catching the right person at the right time in the right mood and doing the right thing, looking for your work.
Yes,
So the whole kind of rejection thing, I mean, you hear like famous authors like Stephen King and J.K. Rowling talk about rejection, and and you can see it, and you're all kind of yeah, of course, and then they look at what happened to them, kind of thing. But
yes.
it's gonna sting, and expect it to sting because you're not human if it doesn't. But know in your heart that it doesn't mean that you're not good at what you do and that you're not going to make it. Because the only real failure is when you stop trying.
Agree. And I actually read a book, Outliers, about it takes
Mm.
10,000 hours to become an overnight success.
Yeah.
It really is quite fascinating. So, the same for authors, anyone
Mm.
who really wants to upskill and become a master in their industry. So it's just, I think the secret is to not give up. And like you say, the rejection will be there. Like I always tell my son, I'm not everyone's cup of tea. I really am more of a champagne type of gal anyway, So
Bubbly. Well, I mean, I
exactly.
used to, before I kind of went full-time writing, I was working in sales. I did advertising sales for
Oh
20 years, which is
wow.
definitely something where you have to get used to rejection. I mean, I would say again and again that career definitely prepared me for this one.
Yes,
But, and the one thing that I would constantly say to myself there is every no brings you closer to the yes.
I love that. And that is brilliant. Also, what I want to ask you before we end is your routine. You say you do this full time. Do you have set times that you write, or do you go with inspiration and then you sit down?
I I depends on the day. I try to stick to office hours where I
I
can.
like that.
So, and I do other things. This isn't my only source of writing income. So I write other things and I do other stuff. I ghostwrite biographies and that as well.
Oh,
So I'm
fantastic.
I'm doing lots of other things, which is great. Um, so yeah, so I try and stick to that. But sometimes, if there's a deadline looming and I feel like I'm not quite there, or I feel like or I get inspiration at night,
Yes.
then I'm gonna sit there until like 1, 2 in the morning just to try and,
Yes. Yeah,
figure it
we're
out and
the
make the
same
most of it.
vibe. We're definitely the same vibe. I do feel it's almost like a sport, writing,
Mm,
because it's like the more you go to the gym, and I'm not a gym like fanatic, but it's my metaphor. But it's like the more you go, the better you get and the fitter you get as an author
mm.
as well. Like I also write most of my days, and it really is the more you write, the better you become.
Yeah, definitely. And it's also one of those things with writing and kind of like I said, you have to have the passion for it. You
Yes,
have to really
agree.
want to do it. And that in itself can make your life so much brighter and better anyway. And one of the things I really loved when Little Bones came out, like I said, it came out during the pandemic and there wasn't, people were kind of stuck at home. They didn't have
Yes.
much. And I was getting readers contacting me saying,
Oh,
I couldn't put your book down. I loved your book. It took me away for 3 days. So it was
oh,
like a holiday for their brain. They couldn't go
yes.
physically away, but their brain could, go into the horrible dark world I created in Little Bones.
I love it. And how can people reach out to you, Nikki? How can they follow your podcast, etc.? Please, and also Facebook page.
Yeah, there's a Facebook page. If you just search for Envy, I can send you links and everything if you like, but search for Envy Peacock Thrillers on Facebook. I'm there actually on Facebook as Nicky Peacock if anyone wants to reach out kind of personally. And also the Red Rabbit podcast, the Red Rabbit Hole,
Love
is
it.
pretty much everywhere. Fingers crossed if I did everything right. So we're on Apple and Spotify and Amazon Music and Audible. So you can find us and subscribe to us there. But me and Lisa, we we do some crazy stuff. So we've talked to lots of different authors about lots of different things, and we recently did a Halloween radio play,
Oh,
which was fun
wow.
because it wasn't scripted.
That's the
Considering
best
I'm a
though.
writer, I didn't write it. I was just like, oh, I've got a vague notion of what we can do. Let's just improv. And she was like, yeah.
Wow, that sounds amazing. I am following you, so I will
Oh,
definitely dive in more and also would love to share your links with everyone. Thank you so much, Nikki. I love the improv. And please, stay in touch if you get new books coming out or new exciting projects. Please come and visit again.
of course. Thank you ever so much for having me. It's been great.
It's such an honor. Thank you so much for joining in for our episode of Write and Shine, Shining Through Your Words series. This is amazing, Nikki. Also sharing some of her wonderful, I want to say adventures, word adventures with us. And if there's one thing that I draw out from her interview as well, it's to not give up on your dreams
Mm.
and it's to be guided by your passion because your passion is it's basically what gets you up out of bed every day and that actually helps you as well that moments of rejection and picking up a pen is not easy. It takes courage. So be like Nikki, if I can say that, pick up your pen, unafraid to share your message the way you feel you want to, and just know the world is waiting out there for your message of inspiration. Have a lovely day. Bye.
Bye. Thanks, everyone.
Just watch me shine.